Hey guys, it's me, Mr. McCabe again, back on my front porch. So these stamps that I made the other day, they pretty much dried out. They're pretty much bone dry at this point. I can go either way on that. Sometimes I carve them dry, sometimes I carve them when they're very leather hard. So either way is good, but you definitely want them to firm up pretty considerably. So now we're going to start. I did refine this a little bit, and so the edges are really sharp on it, and I'm just going with my shape is just a straight circle. So now we're ready to carve this thing. So let me show you how we get started on that. So it's a really good idea to practice what you're going to carve first, so to just write it out. So on my stamp, I'm going to write out the phrase, I'm going to carve into it the phrase, be nice. So if I carve it in just like this, be nice, when I stamp it into clay, it's going to be the mirror image. So we need to start with the mirror image first, so that when I stamp it, it reverses and it turns out correctly. So this is what it needs to look like. So that's really handy to have that down so that you can look at it. So when you're ready to do it, now I can take my stamp and I like to go over it with a pencil first and just really lightly place the numbers, or the letters. So if there's anything I don't like about it, I can redo them, as opposed to just starting to carve it in there. Then you're pretty committed. So I can just kind of play with it a little bit. Make that C real big. So however you want that to look. Now I've got everything laid out. And now I can start to carve it. Okay, so I got this laid out in pencil. And now I'm going to start carving it. So remember, this is dry. So I'm going to dry carve this. Usually, especially in class, we leave them pretty very leather hard. So they're a little bit different in the way that you carve those too. If it's a little leather hard, like in class, as you're carving, you want to pull that debris out of there. So the material that you're carving out to leave that void or that hole, that gap, those lines, you got to kind of pull it out as you carve. So a lot of times when it's leather hard and you're carving into it, I'm carving and then I wipe the junk off the tip of my needle tool. When you're dry carving like this, you just got to go really, really slow. What can happen when you dry carve is that you can chip it if you try to go too fast, and that'll ruin it, or you'll have to really open up your edges. So I just go super, super slow, and then as I do this, as I'm carving, I'm kind of blowing that dust away. So I'm going really slow with this. But again, this is there's two different ways that I kind of approach carving stamps. So this is dry carving, so you can see there's that little dust. And sometimes I keep kind of blowing at it. But what we're looking for when we carve these things, our initials into it, or whatever, is we're looking for a certain depth of line. So we want the tip of the needle to plunge down probably at least 1/4 inch would be good, and we want to open those lines up as well. I'm using a needle tool, which is a good tool to use, but if you use the needle tool, the lines cannot be as thick as the needle tool. They need to be 2 or 3 times as wide, because remember, clay shrinks as it dries and gets fired. So if it's just as thick as the needle tool, they're not going to be thick enough or clay to kind of squeeze in there, or it's going to be really tough. So you definitely want to open those lines up quite a bit if you're using a needle tool, especially if you're doing leather hard carving. I really like to use a sharpened pencil. Those are really nice for carving also, and the thickness is really good on a sharpened pencil. It kind of tapers down, so the tip of it's a little bit thinner, but as you keep plunging deeper with the pencil, it gets wider and wider, it tapers. So for leather hard carving, a pencil tip is really good. Hey guys, I'm back at school here, and I finished carving this stamp. So you can see how deep and wide the lines are, so that when I press the clay into it, the clay will go into those lines and pop out as a relief. So here's a slab of clay. I'm going to push this down and roll it around, and then pull it out. And there we go. Be nice.